Trust me, I'm not being overly dramatic when I say that professional athletes are not that much better than amateur athletes. I know it seems like they are genetically gifted and superior in some way, but truthfully, there are a few things that professional athletes do that set them apart. Today, I wanted to share with you the 6 big differences between us and the pros, but they're not that big that only the pros can do them. They are big because they make a huge difference when you do them. We're also going to share the 4 non-negotiable things that pros do without even thinking about it. You can think of them like 4 legs of a table. Unless all 4 of them are in place, they can topple over at any time. Right, let's get into it.
The first difference between pros and amateurs is that the professionals know when to walk away from a session. This is multifaceted. This could be they know when to walk away when their legs are tired, they know when to walk away when there's pain or injury, or just when the session isn't quite going to plan. And the difference is, do you walk away every single time you're feeling tired or you just don't actually feel like doing the session? And so the professional runners have really got this down to a T. And the main reason for that is that they have learned about their bodies. They know their bodies so well that they can make these sort of calls. And so as a recreational runner, what you want to start doing is start making notes and keep a diary of different things that you feel in a session. And over time, you'll build up these trends of how you felt in different sessions, and you have that to refer back to then sort of go, okay, well, I remember doing the session 3 months ago, let me go back and have a look, and you can then adjust and see what you were really feeling in that session. Using something like RPE or rate of perceived exertion is absolutely key here as well, because that'll give you an idea of saying, okay, well, I remember feeling 4 out of 10 for this session all the time, and now all of a sudden I'm feeling 6 out of 10. That should give you an indication around, okay, what is going on in my training sessions. Another key aspect, as I mentioned, is pain versus injury. So do you stop a session every single time there is some sort of pain? And I think that's a key aspect here as well, is that understanding the difference between pain and injury, or stiffness and injury, is really, really key. So when you finished a run and you've got another run the next day and slightly tired legs or stiff legs, do you go and do another session? Figuring that sort of stuff out is absolutely vital. So if running an easy or long run on tired legs is okay, I would avoid doing some sort of high intensity or interval runs on very tired legs. There's obviously just a higher increased risk of injury when we're doing that. The pros really do understand their bodies so well. They get a good feel of where they are within their training plan, and where that gut feeling of whether or not they should drop out of a session or continue to do another session. And so that gut feeling is there's no way to train that, and I think that is also just why over time learning about your body and where it is and how it's adjusting to training within a certain phase of your plan is key. I mentioned around using RPE and different sort of trends over time around how you're feeling. Another key aspect is looking at your data. So if you are used to training for a marathon and you know that in week 4, this is how your data is normally responding, you're getting a little bit faster in line with how you're feeling, those are really, really key or powerful aspects to have to help you to make these decisions about whether or not to continue to push through a session or to actually call it quits and drop out.
So one thing about pro athletes is that they understand the purpose and value of every single session they do. We stress this so often, but pro athletes run their easy runs so much easier than what we would expect. And actually most amateur athletes can keep up with a pro athlete on their easy days. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you find that when they do hard sessions, they're not going out every single time trying to break records and beat PBs. They know that they need to do race pace sessions at race pace, VO2 max sessions at VO2 max, and getting the most out of that session. And while their high intensity sessions are performed at what seems to us like superhuman levels, when compared to their abilities, you find that pro athletes are actually running very much in control of their sessions, and they're leaving the maximum efforts for race day.
They structure their training properly around their goal race. So what does that mean? It means that they have a long-term plan which takes them through the different phases of training, moving them from a strength block into a speed endurance block, into a sharpening and a tapering block. So depending on the nature of the event that they're training for and exactly when it is, they have a proper plan that takes them to that point. That plan is based on previous workouts and training programs that they have followed that have gotten them to a particular result, and then they tweak and they fine-tune that. They do not jump from one fad to the next or one magic workout that they read about in a magazine. It's systematic, planned out, thought out, and it delivers them success time after time.
The best pro athletes don't race every weekend. Pro athletes understand that they need to peak for their events, whether it's a national championship, an Olympic event, a big track meet, or whether it's for a marathon major, for example. Racing is an exhaustive process that requires tapering and extensive post-race recovery. So the best athletes understand that racing frequently can disrupt the training process.
For me, one of the main differences between professionals and amateurs is how consistent the professional runners are in their training. Recreational runners, of course, we have lots of other things going on, but overall, just in terms of the amount of training and staying consistent, I find recreational runners are very haphazard in their training. They have 2 or 3 weeks of doing really, really well, and then they fall out for another week or two, and then they come back for another 2 or 3 weeks. But the professional runners, of course, this is their job and this is what they do for a living, but this is the main reason for me why they are so successful. It's because they are constantly building small training blocks on top of each other until they eventually have this amazingly strong structure or aerobic system. That consistency in their training really also, in my opinion, comes from them learning to love the process. So it's not just around, okay, I'm training for this marathon, I must get to this goal. They really, really have fallen in love with the process of running and the training itself. And that helps them so much to remain consistent throughout their training plans.
The 4 bases that pro runners cover without even thinking about it are running, strength, recovery, and nutrition. The first of those is running. It may sound really obvious. Of course, we're training for a running event, so we've got to do running. But the important thing is that we do the right running for the race that we are trying to do, and that we cover all the bases involved in running. We've got to look after our aerobic development. So the majority of pro runners do in excess of 80% of their training very easy to make sure that they have an extremely developed aerobic system. And then when they split up into their interval work, their hill work, their speed endurance, they work out the precise percentages that they need that are going to get them the best result for the distance that they are training for. So those will change depending on whether they're training for a 5,000, a 10,000, a half marathon, a marathon, or even longer.
Another basis that the pro athletes always cover is strength training. They are religious with their strength training. Probably doing a little bit more than the recreational runner does, and that's okay. They have the capacity to do a few more sessions. But again, the strength training is key for keeping you injury free firstly, and then of course it enhances your running performance. The injury free part is the key part, because if you are staying injury free, you are then going to be able to be consistent, which is the other point that I mentioned earlier around why pro runners are so successful. Being able to do every single session available to you is going to make you a better runner. So first and foremost, strength training helps with keeping you injury free, and secondly, it will help with performance. And so when professional athletes are doing their strength sessions, it's making them better runners, it's making them more efficient runners, and that is going to have the same effect for you if you continue to do your strength training.
So the third basis ties back into pro athletes not killing themselves in their training sessions. Pro athletes respect the recovery cycle by structuring easy days before and after hard days. And lastly, by taking rest after big events. Pro athletes understand that you don't lose fitness if you take a break after training and at the end of a season.
The final leg is nutrition. Professional athletes eat well to ensure that they are recovering properly from their workouts. They eat well to ensure that they are providing themselves with enough energy to get through their workouts, and they practice their nutrition that they're going to use on race day to ensure that they get the best out of themselves on race day. What energy gels, bars and drinks professional athletes are using is not the right question to be asking. There is very little difference between all the products and you need to find what works for you. The right question to be asking is how professional athletes use those products and nutrition to get ahead. To learn how to use your nutrition so that you can get ahead, watch the video on screen now. This video will do that and teach you a really simple way to look at nutrition that'll make a world of difference.